Broadcasting live from the Free Speech Studios. Deep within the city of Fountain. With over 4 years of satisfying the curious mind and looking damn sexy while doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Phantom Fact Society.
Welcome, everybody, to the Talking Heads podcast. I am Corey from Phantom Society. Corey Hussing here with Project Constitution, Colin himself. How are you doing, Colin? Oh. Working out the bugs, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to all 3,600 watching on the live stream right now. Thrilled to have you here. We have a very special guest with us today, Justin Leslie. He did a live space I think it was last night. I don't know. They're starting to blend together. It might have been the night before last. I listened to it last night. Let's put it that way. And if anyone's followed me on Phantom Society, you know, I've followed this viral delusion for quite some time, and was shocked to hear that someone else was talking about it. I had no clue it appears several people talking about it. But Justin Leslie, just give you a quick background from his side himself. It says, after graduating from the University of Rhode Island in the spring of 2020 with a bachelor's degree in pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences, documentary producer Justin Leslie states he entered a biomedical science master's program at Rutgers University and then took a job as a formulation analytical scientist at Phizer in Andover, Massachusetts. And then it all started to unravel or come together, I guess. But very happy to have Justin come on the show. Justin, thanks so much for joining the show here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's Corey, and then what's your name, sir? I'm so sorry.
Colin.
Colin. Oh, we were DMing earlier.
Yep. Thank you for coming on. And thank you for contacting us. You know, you have a great story and something that we have been interested in for a long time. And, you know, you fit your documentary put a lot of the pieces together that we pretty much suspected, but having the proof is certainly it helped.
Yeah, thank you guys for reaching out. I pretty much anyone who wants to interview me that isn't, it's crazy is gonna get an interview, and yeah, I'm appreciative of being on your platform and just having access to your audience to allow them to hear my story and learn from my human experience. That's all this really is about is learning from my mistakes in a way and what I've been through so that people can see through a lens that I was seeing through, essentially, so
let's start with the beginning, Justin, because I love to figure out what brought you to this point you're at now, because I was going through at justintegrity.net. If I just got the name as we were doing the intro, I'm looking at it like, Justin, yes, I'm a little slow sometimes, so you have to talk slow. You have to talk slow when you're talking to me. But I'm just sort of curious. Why did you choose the medical field to begin with? Like, what was your drive to do this?
Great question. Actually, I ultimately look at it as like a noble thing, in the sense that, so I've like really removed my layers of indoctrination really quickly about the whole medical system. COVID is a gift in that sense, but basically I was diagnosed with this neurological multi-system disorder, and you probably can't tell, right? But I have this disease called tuberous sclerosis complex, which is linked to like epilepsy and autism. And so I had some lesions and stuff on my face and on my back. I have this thing called a shagreen patch. And so at the age of 10, right after I actually had a tumor removed from my left big toe, I was diagnosed with this disease basically. And now I ultimately call it just dis-ease, ultimately, probably from like vaccine injury as a kid and some like psychosomatic stuff ultimately that like these symptoms came out to be. But I was basically super depressed as a teenager. I had this disease with this really long name, TSC for short. I knew I was different in a way, and it ultimately led me to meeting other people with this debilitating disorder. And I realized I was so lucky, that a lot of people have, like 90% of people have epilepsy with this disease label, whereas I have never had like a waking seizure. I don't drink because I ultimately, it can induce stuff when I drink, but I just have to be smart about it. Ultimately, I wanted to get into pharmaceuticals to do research and development work for my disorder, or do like pharmaceutical sales for rare diseases and things of that nature. And I ultimately pretty much was eating, or drinking the Kool-Aid in a way up until probably my senior year of college. And then, I mean, I was like always a critical thinker and didn't really like buy everything that I was sold in a way, but it didn't hit me in the face until COVID-19 narratives started flying out there. Like, I was never taking a flu shot or anything like that. Like, I was never like, oh yeah, I'm getting vaccinated from the flu shot. Like, it was never pro-vax. It was more like, oh, I just want to get into this unique niche. So, yeah, I mean, it was
Did you?
noble in a way, but I didn't realize how bad big pharma was until I really saw through the lines with COVID. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess in a way, kudos, because as a child, you're not really supposed to see through the evil of the world yet, But and congratulations on having your eyes opened, and critical thinking. But I'm sort of curious, when you're 10 and a doctor who's in a lab coat and is sitting there talking with you, you're not going to challenge that as a 10-year-old. And our parents weren't raised to challenge doctors. It was, that's just a very taboo thing to do, especially after you've had like a 30-year relationship some of these people have with their doctors.
Dude,
And the thing is,
my mom got a 26-page printout of this disease that I had, and they basically sent me off to some specialist. And they're like, "Oh, this is yours for the rest of your life. Have fun." So it was like it was definitely a big traumatizing thing at the age of 10 for sure. So go ahead.
and the thing is, you want to, you think that these people all have your best interest at heart as well. So the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies, you think that they are all looking out for you, and that if they tell you to use medicines or you need this surgery or whatever, it's all to help you. But obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, and we're gonna find that out just shortly.
I mean, we're gonna have to bring Justin on more often if we're getting the bikini profiles popping up on Talking Heads. So just side note here for business decision later on.
Shout out Natalie. That's funny.
Oh, got an angry look from the program director over there. So better behave.
Uh-oh.
Well, Justin, when and to your parents' credit, they probably like combed through that 22-page document and considered their research done, which is, that's sort of the first signs of cult think, right? Is the information is provided to you by the source that, there's no real break from the independent thinking. But, you're idealistic. You want to get into medicine. The kids that you went to college with, did you find sort of the same mentality among them, that it was all very sort of idealistic, noble, or what were the intentions of your classmates, would you say?
I would say a majority of them, similar mindset, weren't going in because like, they want to vaccinate kids and stuff like that. I mean, ultimately the indoctrination is so deep when it gets into like how long this has been going on. This has been going on since at least the early 1900s with Rockefeller and all, how they captured the medical system itself. So to fast forward 100 years into, the 2017, 18, 19, 20, when I was going into college or when I was going through this program, I'd say all of them were in a similar mindset in the sense that we were noble about wanting to help people. That's it, right? And it's just you don't realize that you're actually harming people, until something clicks, right? Like for me, it was a trickle effect of like, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why am I watched some crazy documentary about vaccines and everything else, and I was bawling my eyes out, basically. It's not like I wasn't even working at Phizer at the time. This was before I went to work at Phizer. And we can get into the fact that my motivation of going actually to work at Phizer was to expose all of this. There was no other real ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like, sure, I was going to get paid a little bit of money, but it was ultimately to go see from the inside what was going on from a lens of someone that was innocent like myself, just going to see it for what it was, and it would have been like one of you guys going in most likely, like if you were conscious to the fact of what was going on with these so-called mRNA vaccines, I call it poison, right? It's just straight up poison. It's something you shouldn't be putting in your body. I knew it was poison and I wasn't going to, I would, like, gun to my head, I would have walked out, right?
Same here.
So
I've never had it, and I never will.
So did high executives within the company. They felt the same way you did. They just kept their mouths shut, which is where you differed. Let's go into the awakening here, because you talk about the indoctrination, and it starts from the time you're born. Your parents are indoctrinated in vaccination, and then the school system comes, and you gotta get vaccinated before you go to school. And then I don't remember the push very hard when I was in second grade, but I can imagine that there's a push for flu vaccines in second grade now, or a push for parents to vaccinate their kids. So you're dealing with this, you're not even paying attention to it really. Like, you walk into a doctor's office and there's probably 4 things posted on the walls that are all telling you to get vaccinated for one thing or the other. And you wouldn't even, that subliminal messaging just, it creeps down into your psyche. Was it when you were at the University of Rhode Island, or was it later when you start to recognize that there is a lot more propaganda than actual results being provided?
So when COVID, I put parentheses around that because it's ultimately just pretty much media narratives. When COVID was starting in March of 2020, right? When basically the whole world started to hit the fan, I was on top of a hotel, like on a balcony with a pool on spring break. And like there was like this, the NCAA tournament, I think, was around the corner. The NBA season was shutting down. The MLB season started to shut down. All of it, all of that started trickling in like that all at once. I'm like, holy smokes, this is crazy. And everyone around me was like, oh, if we get COVID, we get COVID. And I'm just like joking around, like, yeah, like this is kind of, this should get overblown, right? Like they're just pushing this off for 2 weeks. And then they turned it into like a massive, like 2 weeks to slow the spread until the vaccine comes out in a year type stuff. That's, they locked us down. And right after that 2 weeks of getting back to school and going home for a little bit, because I went from Rhode Island to Connecticut for a little bit, and then I went back to school to like hang out with my friends during my final semester as a senior. It all just started to become this gradual process of like not really wanting to wear a mask. And, I wore it like once or twice at the gym, and then I started to not wear it and I would get kicked out of the gym. Like, this is, I'm like, come on, guys. Like, I'm going to deadlift with a mask on, like, let's get real. So
Well, you
just
had reports of that gym in New York, that guy that was shut down, and I
Ian
mean it was
Smith, right? He's from
yeah.
New Jersey. He's from Jersey.
Was it Jersey? My
Yeah.
apologies, New
He
Yorkers.
went viral on Tucker Carlson because of all
Yes,
that.
yeah. But I mean, that was going on everywhere. He just, thankfully they got the spotlight on someone. I was in Colorado at the time, and there was mom and pop restaurants that their only way to survive was to serve food, and the governor, through special proclamation, uh, destroyed their business and took away all their licenses. Just stuff like that was going on, all for COVID. All for protecting people.
That happened in my state too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Connecticut, so Connecticut was one of the worst states. Basically, it was. I mean, you go into Target, you had to wear a mask, and I mean, I would walk in without it, and I'd go to the register, and then I'd have a gurney thing on, and I just like put it over my mouth so I wouldn't get screamed at, and then walk out. But it was definitely difficult. And in regards to the awakening, it was very gradual. In my master's program at Rutgers, call it Zoom University, right? And the whole reason I was in my master's program was to actually go do research with a professor at Rutgers who was doing research on the TSC thing that I was diagnosed with. But I wasn't able to be on campus because, I didn't have, the vaccine inside me, right? Like, and it wasn't made yet, So their whole agenda was around getting people back on campus to get them vaccinated, right? So my whole first semester was all Zoom University, right? And I literally just heard them trickling in points of like, oh, well, once the vaccines come around, like we can get back to school. And it was just one big fat joke. I was like the one of 2 or 3 students, it felt like, in my master's program of, 50, 60, 70, however many that were willing to like push the envelope. And I watched Plandemic 2 by Mickey Willis and Danny Katz, who I'm friendly with. Um, and that really woke me up, in the sense of going through all the patents that were linked to COVID and HIV. It woke me up to Fauci. I learned about Carrie Mullis and the PCR tests and everything else. And I wrote a huge paper about the whole thing, and I sent it to my drug development professor, and I was like, "Here you go, buddy." And he said, "Good job, Justin," and he gave me 100. I was like, "All right, cool." Like, I didn't expect that, but I lined out their whole narrative of like lockstep linked to the Rockefellers and the cryptocurrency agenda that is coming into play with all of this. I've seen it all before I even started to work at Phizer. So I mean, my tweet the other day, people are like, "Oh, Justin, like, why haven't you spoken out prior to this?" I'm like, I spoke out almost a year ago from now. And I mean, we'll get into it all in the sense of I had some big obstacles to get through, which was James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, and people that I guess my story was too dangerous. What I was doing, like I don't know, like why did they give me the cameras in the first place if they weren't going to tell my story?
Well, let's get to that because I went in to do some research on you the other day because I didn't know a lot about you, and I went to Just Integrity and I was watching your first movie, and I encourage everyone go to justintegrity.net and check out these videos. Absolutely. I thought this whole time it was going to be about Phizer, and that was, then that was it. And it turned into a whole other beast. So, you're on,
What twist?
yeah, yes, you're on, you just keep poking the holes where people don't want you to. And, good. Cause here's the thing. There was how many people knew what you knew and yet just stayed silent because they were just getting their foot into the door. Or I'm sure Phizer has great benefits. I'm like, I how many of those people stayed quiet? And then the problem with blowing the whistle on it is that you're just going to have people that will never get it. They don't ever get it. But the fact that, I mean, and people who were around in 2020, 2021 on social media knew that as soon as you came out with something on anything pharmaceutical related, I mean, it was amazing how quickly stuff was getting shut down,
Oh
accounts
yeah, with
blocked.
fact checkers, all that. Corey, so to touch on like were there people like me? I had no idea in real time. I felt like I was literally the black sheep. I'm like I'm the only one who thinks like I do, right? But it turns out there were some folks like me. It's just a matter of we were so few and far between. I think that no one was asking anybody like, are you a conspiracy theorist, basically? Right, like that wasn't questions that were being had, unfortunately, because there was such a stigma. Like I was getting told, get boosted, get boosted, get boosted. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, little do you guys know, behind, because I had to wear a mask at work. Like that's how crazy they were. I like behind my mask, I'm cracking up because I'm like, these people have no idea that I didn't even take the first two. They just assumed. So but in hindsight's always 2020. After the release of my documentary, I had some I'll leave the guy anonymous, but I got some DMs from this gentleman from Massachusetts who was friendly with a couple folks that worked at the Andover campus with me, and they thought the same exact thing. They were like, we're not taking this clot shot, we're not taking this death shot. Absolutely not. We're just doing our jobs basically and getting out of there. And so, you know, I guess I had such a unique situation too. Like I was 23 years old. It's not like I'm like married, have a wife and kids and have to put food on the table for a family and have to rely on a paycheck to pay a mortgage and all of that good stuff, right? Like I had to pay for rent, right? And that was it. And I was like, something inside me also was just like, you got to do this, and if you don't, like, better, and you're gonna have to answer for why you didn't try your absolute hardest,
Yeah,
and
it does come down to
I got a question for you real quick, Justin. Now, as far as the shot, you said you didn't get the shots. Now, working at Phizer, was this they didn't make you get them, or was this before they made you get the little cards and everything to verify you had the shot, or did you lie like me? Because I was doing pizza delivery at the time because I wanted to also help out my community. And in order for us to be on the road, you had to have a card saying you were vaccinated. Paper, it's ridiculous.
it's insane.
But I forged mine. Mine were fake as shit.
Yeah, a lot of people were doing that. I didn't do that to work at Phizer. In context of everything, there was, the job opportunity came in late February of 2021, early March of 2021 is when I started working there. And I talked to the recruiter and I said, do I have to get vaccinated in order to do this job? And they came back to me with an answer from the team saying, no, you don't have to take the vaccine yet. Right. They said yet, basically. And so I said, all right, cool. I'll go, let's do it. I'll move to Boston for a little bit and then just move back. Right. And so first day on the job, first day on site, they are like, Justin, are you vaccinated? I'm like, no, I was actually just gonna wait and see a little bit like what happens, and my manager was like, oh, okay, well, we'll get you signed up right away. And I said, oh yeah, all right. And I just kind of brushed it off, never brought it up to her again, and just kept going through the motions. I did my online training for a couple weeks, and basically anytime someone talked about like getting vaccinated themselves, I was just like standing there with my mask. I'm like, yeah, just nodding my head. And then ultimately a mandate came down in like mid-November of 2021, where they told us about it. I think it was probably September or October, where they're like, we're at 90% vaccination rate right now on campus, and we want that to get to 99%. Right. So I'm reading this email. I'm like, oh gosh, this is the beginning of the end for me on here. And I was actually working as an operative at the time for PV. I was a source with them. So like I was sending the messages taken a screenshot of this and sent it to them. I said, guys, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm just gonna, go as long as I can, basically, and we'll see what happens. And ultimately, it was November 12th, I believe, was the day that this mandate came into effect. And I was under the assumption that my badge was going to stop working because I wasn't vaxxed or whatever. But it did. And then that morning at 9 a.m., they sent a company-wide email saying, oh, by the way, you can just keep to take the PCR test if you're not vaccinated, right? Like, because I'm sure that, maybe they only got half of that 10% left to get vaxxed, and they would have had an interesting situation where everyone's vaccine status would have been revealed. But another thing that was a blessing in disguise for me was that I was a contractor. So I was technically not a Phizer. They call them Phizer colleagues. I wasn't a colleague. My colleagues were Phizer colleagues. I was a contractor. I still did the same exact role as if I was a Phizer colleague. You still call me a Phizer scientist. I was just, my work was contracted out through this company called Mindlands. They do it all the time. There's hundreds of these contract companies. So my whole thing was my vaccine status was dealt with through Mindlands and not Phizer. So with all the other people from Phizer who were Phizer colleagues and not contractors, their vaccine status, and this is a complete HIPAA violation, was seen by your manager. Your
Really?
manager knew exactly how many pokes you took, basically.
Wow.
Except if you were a contractor, you got out of it, basically. And so I had to deal with my vaccine status through Mindlands. And basically just one day, this dude called me up. He was like 24 years old. So I'm 23. He's 24. He's like, hey, we got this vaccine mandate because you work at Phizer. Basically, whatever the conversation was. And I said, listen, man, I work on this thing. There's no way in hell I'm taking this. I'm like, you could, you could try and force me to. And if you do, you might have a lawsuit on your hands, basically, And he said, hey, listen, I don't want to take it either. We're dealing with the same thing here. And then I basically sent in a religious exemption, and I never heard from them again. So that's the thing. Like, I know a lot of people say that they were ultimately coerced, and a lot of people were coerced. But was anyone ever forced to do it? In hindsight, you could have quit your job, right? I know you had to put food on the table, but I mean, everyone has a to each their own situation. Everyone's on their own spiritual journey with all of this. But, in hindsight, a lot of people should realize that your bodily autonomy is the most important thing. And it's up to you to stick up for yourself.
Now, I know in your documentary, you talk about, some tests that were ran, but I mean, like, what you were working on this vaccine daily, you said?
Yes. Every single day I was on campus, I was pretty much doing. So my role was a formulation and analytical scientist. So I was on a small scale manufacturing team where I was on the analytical side of that team. There were two parts to the small scale team where I would do analytics basically for the small scale fabrication team, is essentially what they called themselves, where they would come up with batches of these mRNA, flu, COVID, self-amplifying RNA vaccines. It stands for saRNA. And all these things have luciferase in them, which, like, all these vials ultimately were glowing and stuff, which was pretty insane to me. I ultimately linked that to like the lipid nanoparticle technology as well. But yeah, I was just doing like 4 or 5 different assays, basically. One was called ribogreen, where it was a fluorescence assay. I was just, pipetting, basically. If you guys know what that is, like you ever seen a scientist with a pipette thing, right? Like that draws up fluid. That's all I was doing. I was a bench scientist for Phizer, working on the COVID shot every single day. COVID or
Aspects
like the
of it.
flu, etc. I was on the COVID team where I guess I got the luck of the draw because I mean there were other people on my floor that were working on like large biologics. They were working on biologics instead of the COVID shot, which I also found interesting, right? Because the vaccine's not supposed to be a biologic, but we're in the biologics area, and I think that's ultimately what links the drug product was frozen at minus 80 degrees Celsius, which is hefty freezing temperatures. No vaccine I know ever was stored at that temperature. And like one of the things I wanted to blow the whistle on actually in real time was I include this in my documentary is Vice President Nick Warren of Biotherapeutics and Pharmaceutical Sciences. He and I had a conversation where after his FDA VRBAC meeting for 5 to 11-year-olds of the approval for the emergency use authorization of this COVID vaccine for that age group, 5 to 11-year-olds, we were working on two different formulations at the time where there was PBS, right? It's called PBS stands for phosphate buffer saline. That had a storage temperature of minus 80 degrees Celsius and only minus 80 degrees Celsius, right? So think about how much storage temperature would come into play with an approval for a shot that's going to go into pharmacies, doctors' offices all over the world, basically. So they ended up coming to a bioequivalence agreement with the FDA to approve the same formulation, except for the very last step. They changed the buffer, which is the tris buffer, right? So the tris buffer allows the vaccine, so-called vaccine, to be stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius at first. And then once it's thawed all the way through, you can store it in like a walk-in freezer or refrigerator type storage temperature. So that would allow for the ease of use to just, skyrocket for all these pharmacies and these clinics, hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So how much really changed? I'm not sure, but stability temperature definitely comes into play, and the stability of the vaccine itself comes into play. And regardless, the vaccine that was approved versus not approved, they're both poison. It's just a matter of they didn't even do the clinical testing for the vaccine that actually got approved.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they didn't even go through any of the animal trials, any of the human trials. They just went right to, I think it was stage 3 or whatever, but the final thing. And that's scary. And that honestly, that's one of the things that raised my, because I'm not complete anti-vax. Like, I've had some vaccines as a child and stuff, but once I saw that they were just bypassing all the regulatory hurdles, I knew something was up. And that's when I started to do more research and like you said, look into the patents and everything.
I hear it. Well, Colin, I think you might want to up your anti-vax level, my friend, because all of them are poison. You don't want to put any of them into your body.
It is a mind-blowing concept, Justin. Let's ease into it. Because
I'm sorry, I just tell the truth, and I love you anyways. If you take a vaccine, go for it. I'm just informing you that they're all poison and you shouldn't put them in your body.
It's well, and I'm excited to get to that. And you're not. Are you discovering this at the same time, or is this come later on with your research about viruses?
For me, it was that like the whole awakening process has been very gradual. It was basically like right as I was about to, resign at Phizer, I was like coming across that virology itself was a complete and utter pseudoscience. And as I went to Project Veritas, I was just like seeing through the lines, and I knew. It's a matter of knowing, it's a matter of realizing and accepting how much we've been lied to. That the Rockefeller and the Carnegie Foundation basically funded all of this in the education system to be presented and shoved down our throat. And when you look into every single pandemic, they're all based on this pseudoscientific backing. And like coming from my lab background afforded me to actually realize that I wasn't doing any science, and that virologists are not doing any science. And to make a long story short, they're basically putting together a cell culture soup and saying that that there's this cytopathic effect that happens in these cells, essentially, right? Call them kidney cells or HeLa cells. You put these cells on a culture plate and you treat them with antibiotics like gentamicin or whatever else, and then you supposedly treat it with a virus, and then all these cells start dying. But when you don't treat it with the virus, the cells die anyway. So that takes their independent variable out of the equation. Like they don't actually do an independent variable. And I refer out to people like my friend Alex Zeck of The Way Forward, Amanda Vollmer, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Tom Cowan. Everyone should look into Mark Gober on Twitter. He's awesome. All these people have been waking up people to the fact that virology is backed on a pseudoscientific foundation. And we don't say viruses don't exist. We say that virology has not been proven to exist, right? There's a difference there. And what we do is we say the burden of proof is on people who are making the claim that so-and-so virus exists, right? And listen, it's all backed on like logical fallacies essentially, and we could talk for hours about this, so I don't want to just make it all about virology, but it was something I felt I had to include in my story because I essentially participated in the Jordan Walker Pfizer's mutating COVID propaganda when there's no, like, I was a terrain guy at the time, and there's this story out there about mutating COVID, and I call it gain of fiction, right? Like they're not mutating anything, so it felt like a huge propaganda show.
Well, and I don't know if you know.
We can have you on the show another time and go specifically into the actual what is all that.
For sure.
Let's get more into the actual story of how you became sort of a spy and a double agent and all that.
For sure. Where do you guys want to start?
Did you reach out to Project Veritas to begin with, or because I know he was breaking a lot of stuff at the time, so you must have seen it on your feed, I assume.
So I got the job offer and I didn't want to take it, but I said, I'll reach out to Project Veritas, see what I can do with them potentially. I literally emailed them. I said, hey, I think this is an opportunity. I could become a whistleblower. What do you think? And they said, Justin, we can't tell you what to do. If you take the job and you come across newsworthy information, please reach back out to us. And so I said, okay, cool. I'll take the job. And I didn't reach back out to them for another 6 or 7 months. And then, they were coming out with stories in like August and September of 2021, Project Veritas was. And there was, God was screaming on the inside of me, like, Justin, scream from the mountaintops, like, be a whistleblower, so that's why I reached out to them again. Like, I was paying attention to the alternative media circles. I knew people were dying, right? And that's blood on my hands. I knew better, so I reached out to them saying, hey, like, you got a Phizer scientist again. I want to help, in all caps, exclamations, like in the subject title, saying like, let me help. And then boom, they strapped me up like the next day after I got on the phone with them.
Wow.
And that's where this whole undercover sting operation began.
What was your goal? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, let's talk about that a little bit. Now, at that time, Project Veritas was already a pretty big organization. They had already done a lot of other breaking reports. So they weren't like some fly-by-night, didn't know what they were doing organization, right?
No, absolutely not.
I think they started in like 2000. I think it was like 2011, 2012. They broke that story of that.
It was 2010 company? Even.
Was it 2010? with
And
the
it was
pimp.
and it was Acorn
Acorn, yes.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yes.
went
So
to
they should
exposing
have known.
Obama and everything else.
Yep.
And I think they had done Planned Parenthood by that time too. I found out they were selling baby parts, and yeah, they were.
Oh
They
yeah,
were.
dude.
Yeah,
Some
they
of
were.
the content that they had, like, it was crazy. Like that, those Planned Parenthood stories are like, they're talking about body parts, like you're saying, Corey. Like in hindsight, like those are huge. So I'm not saying Project Veritas wasn't doing good
No.
work, right?
Yes.
It's just a matter of.
I mean, that was why you went to them,
I'm
is
just
because of what the work they were doing. So it's like, and we'll get into the other stuff later, but like I think Project 2 wants to establish that, like, Project Veritas, there was really, I mean, they dressed that one guy up as a pimp to go into Acorn, and it was so
James.
ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. James dressed up as the pimp. I
That
didn't
was
realize.
James, yeah.
Oh, that's.
James.
I didn't realize. I thought he had some kids do it for him or something like that. But no, that makes it even better. And he's getting all these grants and benefits and welfare stuff for his hose, and it was so unbelievable. I think it was too much of a shock for the culture at the time. It's no way. And then I think he went to California and did it. Or he went all over to these Acorn sites, and it was, and so, like, yeah, it was no mistake. You went to, the best. I mean, besides who was the guy that was in the embassy there for a few years, the British prison,
I'm not sure.
the whistleblower there, Julian
Not
Assange.
sure.
Besides Julian
Oh yeah,
Assange,
but how was I going to contact Julian Assange?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
No, what point I'm trying to make though is Project Veritas was a highly respected and professional organization that had already had experience. They were already experienced, so they should have known what the laws were surrounding videotaping, recording, all that stuff, which is going to come into play later. So that's the part I have a little problem with their narrative. But we'll get into that in a little bit. I just wanted to establish that.
Because you say they just strap you up to a microphone the next day after that email, correct?
Yeah, they didn't say a single thing about recording consent laws. I had no idea. And like, it's not like James O'Keefe is out there on these channels or out there talking about what recording consent law is, educating people, like, and they say that we can't give you legal advice. Well, what do you like? So you can't give legal advice. So you just let someone go willingly break the law for 3 months every single day they go into work, and then basically pull this massive story that they ended up getting with like public information that could save lives. Like, I get it if I had these conversations and they didn't strap me up, right, and it was just like word of mouth, or I don't know, like, this is a weird train of thought, but it's a double-edged sword. Like, how are they gonna give me these cameras and then come up with the excuse that, oh, it's too dangerous to release it? Like, no, they said, my old senior producer, Callan Erickson, I was DMing with you, Project, about this earlier, or Colin, it might have been you, where they spent $1 million on this 3-month investigation, and they decided to spike it into the ground. And I met James O'Keefe on December 2nd, I believe, December 2nd of 2021, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not telling your story. Here's a job." And I was blown away. Like, how do you do that to somebody? Like, you let someone,
especially a story that big.
I was risking everything. Legitimately risked everything. I was risking my life, basically. I felt like I was like being watched 24/7, which I basically was.
Well, and pharmaceutical companies are no joke. Like, especially Phizer at that point in time. I mean, we've covered a couple of people that mysteriously died right before all these events took place, and that would have known better and would have advocated against it and worked with Fauci and these other doctors and knew it was BS. So you were not, you weren't playing around with some high school news piece. It was the pharmaceutical company, one of the largest, the owners of the news.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's no joke. Old institution. What did they tell you to record? I mean, what did they tell you? Like, they gave you a mic, they gave you a camera, and they said, did they tell you to talk to someone? Did they tell you what type of things to talk about?
It started off kind of slow. So I believe it was right around October 1st, October 2nd is when they strapped me up, right? And I figured out how to put a button camera on. I went into work with a button camera, and I just started talking to people and asking difficult questions. I wasn't necessarily good at first, and I didn't want to burn myself either and come across as like, oh, are these vaccines killing people? Right? I wasn't asking that necessarily, right? I mean, I should have, but as I was about to
what I heard.
But yeah, Corey, to answer your question, I mean, it was a gradual process where they saw what I can do, and in the information I sent to you guys, there's a cut down called Conwall cut down. That was the first big thing that I got.
I've got it if you want me to play it. You want us
go
to
ahead,
play it first and then
let
break
the
it
audience
down
see it.
for us. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Welcome all 4,000 of you watching on X Live. Number 2 show on X Live right now. So as soon as Alex Jones has a heart attack, we will be number 1. But
this video here is from October 6th, 2021. I had a meeting with my manager, Conwall Gill, a principal scientist working on the vaccine formulation at Phizer. In this meeting, I asked her if it was okay to give people another experimental injection regarding the booster shots, or if it was a drive for money.
So are we?
But we are still.
Do we know that? Just thinking ethically, is it okay to give people another experimental injection? Are we sure it's going to be safe and effective? Or are we just rolling these out because we want to roll them out for money?
Yeah. This is a real-time data that we are generating. We don't even know. When we started vaccinating people, we had no idea how it's going.
All right, I have to pause it real quick because who is this lady that you're talking about? What's her role in your?
She is my direct manager, and she is essentially the head of the analytical team that I was explaining about earlier. So she wasn't vice president level, right? Which I did receive information from this guy Nick Warren, but she was more of a director level, but she was involved, 100%. I mean, she had pull, and if I had to estimate her salary, she'd probably making 200 plus K easy, so that's something to take into effect in regards to her cognitive dissonance when it comes to questioning what is really happening.
It's very and before, we'll play this, but it just sort of reminds me of how I hate to throw Nazis out there willy-nilly, but how you can categorize people in these little shells, and as long as you feed them certain types of information, she's out here defending it to her teeth, where in any normal situation, as in a critical thinking situation, would cause for pause, but she's in this this role, this position over you, but she has no power over any decisions. She's just a mouthpiece.
I mean, collectively, herself and I could have potentially spearheaded some sort of whistleblowing within the analytical team and tried to bring it up. She was 2 people from a vice president, essentially, so there's her manager, and then there's the vice president level, so she
you're
wasn't
not talking to 100th down on the rail here. You're talking.
No, she was about, in regards to levels down the totem pole, she's about 4, I would say, so it's not like she wasn't the biggest fish, but she was not just a minnow either.
It wasn't a joke. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just want a little context.
Out for money.
Yeah. This is a real time data that we are generating. We don't even know. When we started vaccinating people, we had no idea how it's going to look like.
Yeah.
mRNA vaccines have been there for 50 years, no, but nothing made to clinical. Why? Because mRNA vaccines have been known to have side effects.
Right. But
Moderna has been working on it for 10 years. This is not the new thing, right? But why it did not reach trial was because of all these side effects. We, Pfizer and Moderna, used the emergency and the pandemic to kind of get through it now.
Okay.
But we didn't. But even CDC noted we
so
don't
it
have
could
data.
never get FDA approved until we had this emergency, right? Like we had to try something new. So, but why didn't we try like a vaccine formulation that has been effective in the past, like with egg yolk or something that they used with?
My apologies, I didn't realize muted. You remind me of my apprentices. I'm an electrician, and it's just like I'm trying to get through this goddamn meeting, Justin, and you're out there throwing these philosophical bangers at me, and I just want to get to my office and have my donut. I mean, that's sort of and that's. I mean, I'm not saying that's the right thing, but you're bringing up these like, hey, this has been known for 50 years. You recognize it's been known for 50 years, and we're just sort of playing with fire. And she's just like,
She literally is like, pandemic, roll it out, roll it out, roll it out. It's not a time to think, it's a time to act. Like in the doc, I don't know if it says it in this cut down, but I mean, she talks about Albert Bourla and Ugur Sahin not knowing about like the vaccine efficacy, what's really playing out with it, and at the end of the conversation calls it a money game and then puts the mask back up over her mouth. Is that not guilt?
No.
They're just
I'll play
mindless
this
drone collecting a paycheck.
Yeah. I'll play this out here.
Flu, right?
Yeah, so we here did not do it because we already have collaboration with BioNTech on flu before actually COVID happened. So mRNA. So what the story behind we starting on this, because BioNTech guy Ugur Sahin, the BioNTech CEO, he called Catherine Jensen.
Sahin.
Yeah, he called Catherine Jensen and he's like, hey, I have this technology, but I don't have resources to make it big. So Catherine was like, well, we had a collaboration in place before for flu. So we wanted to give it a shot. It is a new mRNA thing. Nobody knew anything about it. We never had.
Let's just give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
We never had this. Everything is just fresh from last year.
Learning on the fly.
So it was on the fly. Pandemic, just roll it out. There was no time to think. It was a time to act.
Who Conwell was mentioning in this clip is Catherine Jensen, the former head of vaccine research and development at Phizer.
I'm Catherine Jansen. I develop vaccines which help millions of people around the world to be protected from nasty and deadly infections. Currently, I'm developing a vaccine candidate to help prevent COVID-19.
All right, that's the end of that clip.
Yeah, so the money game one is, I have a couple cut downs of these. If you wanted to show that part, I think we could pull up a tweet or something. But I mean, just refer everyone to the documentary. I mean,
yeah,
the content speaks for itself.
One part of the documentary I definitely do want to show before the show's over is the clip with the I forget his name, but the vice president guy that specifically mentioned about how they got FDA in their pockets.
Yep. With
that's the clip I want to play.
You're saying with Nick Warren project?
Yeah, Nick Warren. That's it. Yep.
I didn't send that part cut down to you guys. I can pull it up. I don't know if I would have to share my screen, but
yeah,
you can.
You can pull it up on your end, and we can bring it up for you.
Yeah, so we can continue on talking about Conwell in the sense of, I mean, she's talking about how it takes 10 years for a vaccine to come out. Pfizer CEO, BioNTech CEO won't have answers, and in that it's essentially becoming a money game. And it's such a red flag to hear that in hindsight, and knowing what I knew, like I felt so disgusted, honestly. Like, imagine just sitting there and realizing this conversation, like with an influential Pfizer scientist. It was heartbreaking. And so that was October 1st of 2021. The next thing that I sent you guys is the Ramin footage
Yep,
of
I've got that for you.
1021. Let's put that one up.
Ramin Davari, the pharmaceutical formulation scientist from Pfizer, one of the head honchos of the COVID-19 formulation team. This clip was from October 21st, 2021. Just listen to what he has to say about the safety issues of the vaccine.
My mother called me 2 days ago and said that her therapist's friend told her that her friend took a booster shot and died like the same day, I think, in her bathroom. I don't know if it was Pfizer, but like
the only booster shot so far has been Pfizer.
So I mean, well, it must have been Pfizer, and I'm just like concerned that, like, I mean, she was relatively old. She was 77 apparently, but I mean, it's kind of scary to me.
That's the thing. Just people die every day.
Oh, wow.
People die every day. You're taking part in a massive clinical trial on the entire population of the world, and you're not concerned about people potentially dying.
Well, that's the thing, Justin. People die every day. Now get back to freaking work.
I'm just
when he said that, you were probably like pulling your hair out, like, oh, I can only imagine how you felt when you heard him say that.
Oh my god, so much anger, so much rage. It's pretty indescribable. And the Project Veritas team actually thought that this dude Ramin was not a good guy, for sure. Like, they thought he was. They were calling him a villain internally, believe it or not. So, him and this guy Nick Warren potentially like were in the know of.
How did you get access to him?
He was on my floor. I worked with him every day. I literally, if you look, I mean, the angle is actually pretty awful, but I mean, so that's my wrist right there, right? And with one of my, couple bracelets that I have, right? I have these bracelets, right? The behind there is the windows on the second floor of the building of the lunchroom. I was just sitting there wrapping up lunch, and Ramin walked in, and I was rolling, and then I just started asking him some hard questions about, and then I used a real world situation here where my mom's friend's mom took a booster shot and freaking died within like 4 hours of taking it, or like 12 hours of taking it. So it's not like I was lying to him at all. I didn't make any of it up. I just used that to elicit this information out of him. And he goes on to say, people die every day. We get zillions of reports every day. It's up to the clinical people. Shut up, Justin. And then the chip company metaphor that he comes up with is pretty jaw-dropping once you connect all the dots. How he brings it back full circle with heart attacks. So
whetting my appetite here.
That we should look into and make sure that the boosters
are looking into it.
Yeah.
It's just not our job to look into that.
Yeah.
But there are people within Pfizer, all the political people.
Okay.
And the safety people.
Right.
There are people who are not only looking at that, actually there are reports that come to Pfizer, zillions of them every day.
Zillions.
Oh yeah.
Do you think Pfizer gets mad when they don't mandate it?
From a business perspective?
Yeah.
It's just like saying, you think the chips companies, they're going to get mad if somebody says chips is not good for you? Of course.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I mean,
they don't care if people just eat chips all day and die. Because their job is
to sell chips.
Engineering it the way that I take. No, it's not even selling it. It's for me to take it, basically, right? Because otherwise I won't buy it.
Right.
Yeah. So You forget about those parts of business, basically. So yeah, they're engineering it specifically for me to take the next one.
Right.
So increasing my consumption, guess what? It's going to affect my heart, and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, they are now. They are now. Ahead of this time over there.
We are talking about it now. And so that was basically the quote that basically confirmed with the Project Veritas team internally that this dude Ramin, like, he pretty much knew that these vaccines were murking some people and that they were affecting people's hearts and giving them myocarditis, and some of them were dying potentially. You know, I mean, we're speculating on what he knew and what he didn't know, but that does not sound like an innocent quote right there. You create the metaphor to distance yourself, but you're talking about engineering chips to have people take the next one, right? And from a business perspective, like, you could care less if people eat chips all day and it affects their heart and die.
As long as they keep coming back to chips until you're dead. Yeah.
It's not good.
Well, you know, and I have good friends that are in the medical community, and you know, I would say I would start really questioning this stuff probably around like 2016, 2017 was when I was going through my eyes being open to the medical field of things. And, you know, I'd question them about it. And, you know, it was always in the medical field, it was always, well, let me just, you know, point you to a chemical solution. And if I couldn't do that, let me point you to a chemical solution that can ease your pain until your body just heals naturally. You know, and I just thought that was very odd, you know, because they haven't really extended life. They just maybe extended the quality of life up to death still. So, and now even that's gone. So in America, at least. And his reasoning was what this one guy told me. He goes, well, you can trust the medical field because why would they ever create a product that would kill you? That, you know, their money is making sure you stay alive. You know, and he was just so close to making the final step there, you know, staying alive on their medication. But that's the final goal. And I think you see that in full force when it comes with when COVID comes around. They're licking their chops. You know what I mean? Like Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson and Johnson, everyone is licking their chops to get this vaccine out there because it's big money, and they don't really care about anything else. At least from these clips, that's internally too.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you're making 200K, potentially 300K, who knows how much these guys were making? Like Nick Warren, who we can watch in a sec. I'll hit share my screen, right, to do this.
Yep. Make sure your audio is shared too.
All right, it says screen sharing tips. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm doing the audio. Some screen lists let you share audio. Look for the share audio. Okay, we're gonna hit share screen, and then we're gonna do window, and then we're gonna do the
play-by-play is beautiful. There it is.
All right, so you guys can see this one. All right, so this is actually straight from the YouTube channel that is just live, right? So they were go to the 2 hour and 32-minute mark and 42 seconds if you want to see the exact spot. This guy right here is Dr. Bill Gruber, and the guy who's about to step on is Nick Warren, who was he was basically Ramin's boss, the guy who we just watched talk about zillions of adverse events and that made the chip company narrative metaphor. So we'll watch this and then we can bring it all into full context.
It's on mute on the there you go.
All right, here we go.
Ooh, can't hear it. Yeah, can't hear it. I tell you what.
Can't hear it?
No, but if you want to copy that link and put it in the private chat for me, maybe I can pull it up for us.
Okay.
Just give me the timestamp again. Because I was,
Gotcha.
as you were telling me the timestamp, all I could think about was how grateful I didn't have to remember the timestamp. So
it's all right, I'll stop sharing my screen. So I don't know why these streaming platforms sometimes the audio doesn't cross over. It's weird.
It is weird.
Maybe it's because I have
Yeah, they're
headphones
wonky
in.
sometimes.
Might be because I have headphones in and it's not like super high def headphones. The 2 hours 32 minutes basically is the perfect starting point.
All
Or
right.
you can even do 33 minutes. And I also, one thing is it's the numbering within when he went on is basically 233, which is Skull and Bones. So like
yes, 33. 33 is magic number.
2 hours and 33 minutes is that's 233. That's a Skull and Bones number. So I find it interesting.
All right, we're gonna get it 233.04 right here.
Refrigerated stability, an increase from 31 days out to 10 weeks, as well as it enabled us to dilute the product from 0.5 milligrams per mil to 0.1 milligrams per mil, making it easier to prepare the dose. Chris is a precedented buffer in biotechnology and has been used in at least 3 vaccines. Our decision was based on empirical stability data, manufacturability, and ease of use for pharmacists and healthcare professionals. We prefer not to speculate about the underlying chemistry. We have performed an extensive comparability evaluation comparing the 2 formulations and have found them to be biochemically and pharmaceutically comparable. Please note that the manufacturing process of the RNA active ingredient and the lipid nanoparticle is completely unchanged. The only change is in the formulation, which is the last step of the product manufacture. Again, there is no change to the active ingredient.
Thank you.
That's about it. If we watched for the next 7 minutes, there would be another pretty good quote, but it's not worth it. I don't have it like ironed out exactly, but it's not good. I mean, he literally, they just said that we didn't do the clinical trials and we came together on a bioequivalence agreement with the FDA, and we prefer not to speculate on the underlying chemistry. What do you mean we shouldn't speculate on the underlying chemistry? You're changing the last step of the formulation. Like that's if they didn't have emergency use authorization, which is a scam in its own right, that's fraud. You know, that they're pulling all these strings here, and it's a red flag. I mean, even the left, you know, I don't want to say, anything wrong. The people on the left that were willing to go get this shot, right? Do you think they would have actually took it if they knew that it wasn't even clinically tested? I don't think so.
We know that it was implied by Kamala Harris to the black community not to take the shot because Donald Trump was pushing it. Because, it could be a Tuskegee experiment part 2. It was one of the craziest shifts in narrative I'd ever seen. So, that's 6 weeks before the election. They get put into the office, and it's the exact opposite narrative now. That it just blew my mind. But that's what we saw was this immense pressure to persuade people one way or the other. And as soon as the elections were over, the deals were made with the pharmaceutical companies between them and the politicians and insurance companies, and it was full bore vaccine no matter what cost. And any drug that could be argued as a therapeutic was maligned by the medical community that had encouraged it years prior. We talked about this last week. It was the craziest reversal of like herd immunity. They changed the meaning of that. Like it's
They're changing a lot of things nowadays. Yeah. They changed, like within the last 4 years, they've changed everything. I mean, for baseball, even they're letting the Yankees grow facial hair nowadays. They're literally just changing the NFL. They changed the way that the kickoffs work. Like they're changing everything so we don't recognize anything subconsciously. But obviously back to all of this, you're spot on. I mean, they're changing the definition of immunity. They're changing the definition of even what a vaccine was, right? And I mean, for me, it's obviously all vaccines are poison, but regardless, if they were able to use ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine as a stopgap for the emergency use authorization to not go through, that would have been great. People would, people would have, from my perspective, been poisoning themselves with pharmaceuticals, but way less than what they were poisoning themselves with these shots that were, people were dropping dead after taking it, like within 15 minutes, boom, drop dead, or boom, got Guillain-Barré syndrome within a day, or they have facial paralysis, it's,
Well,
Well,
you have to wonder, the globalists, they want to depopulate half of the world anyway. So it really makes you wonder whether these executives of these pharmaceutical companies already have that in their mind and are actually doing it on purpose, maliciously.
This just in, Snopes rates your statement as false. It's only 30% of the world population. God damn it. It's way to inflate.
30% of the world population, what?
Yeah, that's only 2.8 billion people, not half. That's it. Only 2.8 billion. That's all they want. Gone.
So basically, you guys heard what Nick Warren said, right? Where he's talking about this whole bioequivalence thing, and I watched pretty much like 6 or 7 hours total of that entire 8-hour stream, right? Where who in their right mind is actually going to watch all of that to get the informed consent of what was actually playing out? And I mean, in the 6-something hour mark, Steve Kirsch actually went on there and literally destroyed everybody on what was going on with the adult vaccine reactions. And they were like, he's saying if you give this to kids, you're evil, essentially. And there was another quote in there basically saying, we won't know anything until it starts going into kids, so we might as well just start doing it. But basically, all of that with Nick Warren, that whole meeting talking about the bioequivalence, combined with Conwell Gill talking about a money game, talking about how she started talking about politics as well, even and then combining that with the chip company metaphor, and combining that with the zillions of deaths or of reactions that were coming from from Ramin, on top of everything else that is on the hard drive that is where I'm still looking to corroborate where it is, but at Project Veritas won't even.
We'll get to the hard drive, because we're still under the impression everything's good between you and Project Veritas. You're busy capturing all this audio inside the offices of the beast, and you're inside the belly of the beast there. And then what's the point you go to O'Keefe and you're like, listen, bro, we got to get this out now.
Well, so I was a naive 23-year-old young kid, basically young man. I was not corroborating with myself, or not corroborating, but I was not backing up this footage. So I was working directly on site. Like they had a journalist working directly with me pretty much 24/7 because of this operation that I was on, right? That's where I was telling you guys, the $1 million came into play. They had to rent out a hotel room and have a journalist on standby basically with me 24/7, so that when I went to and from work, if I got a big comment, I was handing them the SD card, because I was very much hands off with the technology. I was like, listen, I'm just gonna go get it all. You guys can deal with the SD cards, like that's my mindset towards the whole thing. And obviously hindsight is 2020. I wish I learned how to do the damn thing, but it was a massive mistake. But basically, all of this information came, you know, and I obtained it. And then there was also the Dr. Carrie Madej footage where she went on Stu Peters' show. I provided the microscope vials. You know, we put the vials under a microscope and looked at them to see what was going on. And Carrie Madej, I explicitly remember her saying that this is, you know, we're seeing like big clumps in these shots, and they're like these dark black, purple, and looking objects that were like kind of moving. And she was like, this is graphene or some graphene like substance. You know, she didn't want to say, like, I know for a fact that this is graphene, but she's like, this doesn't look like something that should be going inside of us. And like, as she was moving around the slides, like, there were, seemed like parasites and other, you know, I've heard the term Morgellons thrown around. But basically what happened with, yeah, this part.
I've got
Play
this.
part.
Yeah, if you want me to.
Play it. Oh.
Yeah. No, I got it muted here.
Put the
yeah,
muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good for context of bringing into the FBI raid.
Yeah. Here too. There we go.
There you go.
Dr. Carey had brought with her 2 vials of vaccines, being the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson shots. Along with the Pfizer shots that I provided, we had that evening in our possession the vaccines from 3 of the major vaccine producers at the time. 2 different microscopes were provided in the apartment, and Dr. Carey proceeded to place the Johnson & Johnson vials on the slide. Everyone there saw these black circles and what looked like parasites revolving around them as if they had a mind of their own. Next, we looked at Moderna and the Phizer shots, and both had similar parasitic-like creatures in them, though they looked a little bit different from the Johnson & Johnson. Veritas insider Sundance had his blood drawn, and Dr. Carey put it on the slide with the Pfizer vaccine, and the blood cells coagulated immediately. Now, I am not claiming that I had any idea what was happening on the slide, as this was a phenomenon occurring outside the body, but it was absolutely nightmarish to witness.
So that's the context of the whole microscope story, basically, and why they even called me microscope.
Now I'm gonna help me out here because I am a very ignorant person. You know, so I had heard, you know, during that time you just heard all sorts of theories, and I remember this. What was it called? The graphene. What was
graphene oxide and like luciferase were going around.
Someone said that was like, and help me, like that's part of the glass you put it on, like that graphene it comes with it, or
it's possible. Don't get me wrong. I don't exactly know what we were looking at, you know.
Okay.
But
okay.
What I will tell you is that.
Well, can we play this part? Because this, I mean, the blood coagulating immediately is the part that's creeps
go ahead.
me out.
Yeah, there's a little bit left.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we did legitimately was a science experiment in an apartment building that Project Veritas owned, and it was right outside their headquarters. And that guy, Sundance is his code name, Jackson's his first name. Carrie Madej drew blood from him, put it on a slide, and took the Phizer jab and put it right on it. And then, I kid you not, I'd say 20 seconds it took, and it just started crumbling together, you know, and stopped moving. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense why all these people are just having heart attacks, strokes, embolisms, and dying, you know, like what gives, you know? And I mean, at the time, I'm pretty sure embalmers were stepping forward too with, you know, clots coming out of people's necks and coming out of their thighs and whatnot. And so, I don't have it directly on me, but there is a patent actually that links this whole entire thing to a drug delivery system that is linked to graphene oxide. And so it's so messed up
So
because
so
I saw it in real time,
so yeah, I mean, like, and you had to. I mean, I'm not even nowhere close to the significance of what you've been working on, but I know when I make connections, man, it just pumps you full of dopamine. Like it gives you that adrenaline, and especially in the middle of COVID, where lies are just rampant. And they've shut down any free speech on any social platform. You've got to be so excited that this is going to Project Veritas and that this is going to get some light of day. And after, I mean, all this stuff is compiled, what are you told? Like, when are they going to break your story? Because I
Well,
don't remember
so
seeing your story.
yeah, you didn't see it because they got raided by the FBI on November 4th and November 6th. And this all happened literally like 2 weeks prior. Carrie Madej went on Stu Peters' show, if you remember, right, where she was talking about all of this, saying, there's a Phizer whistleblower who is working directly with Project Veritas. Stay tuned, and like she's like, I have these pictures and a little bit of video, but Project Veritas is working with the whistleblower. Stay tuned. And then boom, that video went viral. It got at least a couple 100,000 views. Yes, play this part. 2021, Dr. Carrie Madej went on the Stu Peters show, sounding the alarm of what happened that Thursday prior.
We had Dr. Carrie Madej on this show several weeks ago. Last time she told us about the horrifying things that she saw when she put vials of the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 shots, vaccines, under the microscope. Now she's giving us a first look at the Phizer vials, and she wants to tell us the things that she has seen. Dr. Carrie Madej joins us now. You sent me some horrific slides and videos. I don't know what any of this is, so I'm going to rely on your expertise to tell us.
Thanks, Stu. Yeah, I'm happy to help. So I have worked with Project Veritas, an amazing team there, and they were able to work with a whistleblower from Phizer, and through chain of custody, they brought forth some of the vials. So
Just to pause it for all 7,200 people watching the show, the whistleblower she's talking about is Justin Leslie right here. Is it Leslie? Am I saying the last name right?
That's perfect.
All right.
My mom won't yell at you.
That's what I worry about,
So I have some of my own images, but Project Veritas will be, giving their story very soon, which will have so much detail, so much data.
You must have seen this and just been, I mean, did you see this before? And you must have been pumped up.
Dude, I was pumped up, but I was also shitting my pants, basically. I was like, oh, God, she put a target on my back. What am I going to do now?
You were still working at Phizer at this time, correct?
Yes. Yes. And then the FBI raid happens in like a week and a half after this, after she did this with Stu. Right. So think of just the psychological, like, what was going on in my head. I mean, I go back to it all the time, and it's.
Were your parents aware you were?
Absolutely not. They had no idea what was going on.
Smart.
It was crazy. Yeah. Oh my God. And I mean, in the film was show a part with Sean Hannity and James O'Keefe being on Fox News after getting raided by the FBI, and that was basically where I was home actually with my dad and my brother at the time watching it live. And I was sitting there with my tongue, just biting on my tongue. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is insane. I had no idea really what to think at the time. Like, within the first 24 hours, I'm like, these guys got raided by the FBI, and it has to do with Ashley Biden's diary. But I just went viral.
You didn't know that, though, at the time.
Well, does it?
No, that was the narrative that was public. It was Ashley Biden's diary. That's what they were talking about. And I was like, how does that make sense? I just want to, I had just worked with Carrie Madej in Veritas, and she went on Stu Peters' show, and it just went viral. I was paying attention to the media circles, and it was like 200 something thousand views, I thought, or something like that, so people were aware. slightly. But the Veritas FBI raid had to do with spiking my story. Absolutely. 100%. You know,
I believe that as well.
Wow.
So
So
the more I
this,
tell my story, the more people are like, okay, does it make sense that it was actually Biden's diary, or was it the fact that Justin just provided them the biggest story in the history of the world and they didn't want to tell it? So they came up with a narrative and an excuse, because this Ashley Biden's diary investigation started in October of 2020, guys. Whereas what I did was literally a week and a half prior. Are we really gonna just eat their, drink their Kool-Aid that they're feeding us? That's a huge reason why I've stepped forward, because I knew all that, and James is out here talking about his FBI raid and the Ashley Biden diary. And the FBI raids nobody without convicting them. And James, Spencer, Eric Cochran all got away, no conviction, nothing. Case dropped recently as well. So
by
it's a huge
Biden's
anomaly.
administration, or was it dropped during Biden or Trump?
It was dropped recently, I think, with Trump. Like a few,
So do you think
recently.
did they steal all of your content then? Is that what you're thinking? Or did they bully
they
O'Keefe?
I would say that, I mean, I'm speculating here, but I ultimately feel that James got FBI'd in like 2010, 2011 with the whole Acorn thing. He got arrested, and ever since he's been co-opted, most likely. Or either that or he was co-opted from the start. I believe he is an intelligence asset 100%. I mean, he's been connected to Eric Prince, Blackwater.
Definitely got connections with the intelligence aides. Absolutely.
100%. I sent you guys a DM of Alex Jones basically saying that James O'Keefe is a highly trained intelligence asset by the CIA. He admitted that after he got an undercover story on a defense intelligence asset himself.
I mean, I saw pictures of you hiking with O'Keefe and bro hugging it out. I mean, how much time did you spend with him? Would you say, because this whole thing's going on, what would you say, 5-6 months?
I worked for James for a year and a half.
Okay.
So that picture of us hiking was at a call it an all hands event. I barely knew James at that point.
Listen, I just said it out of jealousy because there's no way I'm getting up on that trail. I'm like, this motherfucker. He's probably like 50. But no, I'm just curious, like, was there a bond between you and James, or?
No. Apparently James actually wanted to always fire me until I got the biggest story in company history, and then he looked at me like I was, the best journalist ever. Yeah, play this actually.
Yeah, here's that clip you were talking about, by the way.
Obviously just got it. O'Keefe was told where to go, what to do, who to target. And it's not a secret that he was trained by the good guys in the CIA. So obviously the bad guys know this, but I want to just let their minions know.
Well, and I mean, that makes sense because there is a civil war going on in our State Department, has been for quite some time. And, there's argument to be made that Alex Jones himself is an asset. And by asset, I mean, the information that was just given to him, I'm not saying it came with a cost, but it was written in a way to influence the public one way or the other. So, I feel like in that way, he served as an asset in certain areas.
For sure.
That would be an unknowing asset as well.
Yes. You're not saying O'Keefe's unknowing. Yeah, I mean, your feeling when you were with him, and what was your feeling of this guy's character?
I mean, my gut was just, it always felt like I was being manipulated and I was being used. I always
that's what he does. I mean, that's what he does, is he's a manipulator. He's just, doing it for the sake of good is how it's, portrayed. And I'm not saying he's not either, but if you've got the power to manipulate, then use it for good, I guess. Like that's That's the skill
Right.
you've been given.
Well, what controlled opposition
one-
ultimately does is they drop out bits of truth, but they also are able to manipulate and trickle in a lot of lies as well, you know. And like with my whole situation, I mean, he, when they offered me a job, right, to um, get to on how they buried this story, they said recording consent laws were broken. You crossed the state lines with the microscope issue, and those were like the two big reasons. And then they also used the FBI raid. And the day that I met James, we sat down for 40 minutes at a Capitol Grill. They dropped $700 on a dinner with me, right? So I got a nice steak. And while I'm eating my steak, James O'Keefe is sitting in front of me eating soup, and he is showing his wrist to me like this as he just got arrested by the FBI, and he had like, you know, marks on his wrist and stuff a month earlier. And he's like, I got arrested by the FBI. The ACLU is backing me up in this, and that. And I just said, James, it's great that you got raided by the FBI, buddy, but I worked on this story for 3 months, and you're not going to tell it and let little kids basically die, just to let you know, like, and I wish I recorded the dinner, but I was naive and I was scared.
Well,
honestly.
you were working in confidence too. You didn't suspect malice, I don't think, yet at that point, did you?
I was on the fence at that point, very much on the fence, and I was pleading with him, and he just said, "Nope, like we'll give you a job though."
How much did he offer you? I'm just curious.
Money wise, I didn't get paid that much. I was offered a contract actually at first, which meant I was gonna get paid $200 a day.
Now
And it was not guaranteed.
I wonder if part of putting you on contract was so he could keep you on a leash to make sure that you you didn't go off doing what he didn't want you to do.
Pretty much my thoughts exactly. 100% project. I concur, and I used it against them essentially to go investigate them and go get my Phizer story back is what I said to myself. You know, I felt that the best course of action was to go get my content back somehow. I had no idea how it was going to happen.
They had taken your content. You had no access to any of the stuff you'd recorded or anything like that.
Yeah, they took it and they didn't give it back to me until after I got the Jordan Walker story, the biggest story in company history. And so when I got that story, I went from green belt, which was a rookie, all the way up to like a black belt in the eyes of everybody. They were like, "Oh my God, you got the biggest story ever." You know, like you're a god, basically. You know, not literally they weren't literally calling me a god. It was just like it elevated me so much in rapport, you know, and so they looked at me just differently, and the way that Project Veritas operates, and if you guys remember and go to the timeline of the releases, the Jordan Walker story came out about, you know, the gain of function directed evolution story, and then there was the fertility story that came out as part 2. So the Project Veritas team didn't originally want to release the fertility footage that I had obtained, which I thought was a red flag. First off, I thought it was a red flag. Like, why wouldn't you want to put this in there? Like, they're talking about menstrual cycle issues from the vaccine as a adverse event. Like, this is content. And they were just like, nah, you know, like no one really wants to hear this stuff. And I was like, you got to be joking. But basically, after this story blew up and I got like 30 million views in a week, James and the leadership team, like the head journalists, the lawyers, they all got together and they were like, should we release Bam, which was my code name? Should we release Bam's footage from when he was an insider? That was a discussion that they had on January 25th of 2023, I believe. And they talked about it because they wanted a follow-up, and they ultimately said no. But the reason I got my footage back is because my colleague Nightingale, Alicia Gamble, who I ended up outing because her husband was at January 6th in SWAT gear. His name's Brian Gamble, connected to General Mike Flynn, was his right-hand man. And I ultimately think that whole thing was just a massive red flag. January 6th, big psyop.
Absolutely.
Basically, and I love Nightingale 100%. I go on the record saying that every time I talk about her, it's a matter of fact of the way things played out. She probably hates my guts, but
whatever,
to
man.
each their own.
Get over it. Yeah.
Basically, she sent me this footage of the Conwall stuff that we just watched, and I think she didn't realize that she sent the video along with the transcript, and I screenshotted the whole thing or screen replayed the whole thing. And so that was the first content that I had obtained. And then I basically said, all right, I got some of my Phizer story back. Here we go, and one thing led to another after that. I'm like, I must be doing the right thing here, because I got a bombshell stuff that, if and when released to the public, is going to make Project Veritas look bad with all the content.
Was O'Keefe in contact with you during any of this, trying to dissuade you, or what?
James sent a Microsoft Teams message actually saying, like, it was so hard not to go forward with your story after the Jordan Walker story was released, right? And he was just like buttering me up, saying it's so great that we didn't tell your Phizer story the first time so that you could do this one. And I was just like, yeah, man, like, thumbs up, basically, right? And everyone's like calling me a hero. And here, I'll read directly. He goes, Pam and I discussed the SI conducted Wednesday while I'm in New York City. Looking forward to seeing content. Bam Smith was, everyone was their code name in Smith. Long time coming, but I told you this day would come when we had dinner in Connecticut 2 years ago. It was a tough decision not to go then, but it shows that your resilience and never quitting is such an important core value.
Oh, just makes you sick.
I read that and I was like, yep, definitely something to be said about resilience and never giving up. I'm visualizing a very big impact. And I was just like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. And like biting my jaw, basically. So yeah, that's how that played out. And then ultimately we get to, like, I was still doing undercover journalism after the Phizer story. And actually, prior to the Phizer story, I was doing an investigation in Long Island, which was called Ed Camp Long Island. And basically, to make the long investigation short, I went to a professional development meeting as a master's student. And I met some teachers, basically, who had this DEI agenda that was public, but really behind the scenes, it was very much like LGBTQ and indoctrinating like kindergartners all the way up through middle school and high school levels to, like, come out being gay and, are you trans? Like, what are your pronouns? Yeah, this whole thing is pretty nuts.
We don't have to play it if you don't. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but
no,
I mean,
we don't have to. I mean, it's just more context for the audience. I'm just telling the timeline, basically. That guy is an assistant superintendent, Dave Casamento.
Well, that's what I sort of wanted to talk about before we get too sidetracked. I mean, we could save it. We could save it later. But I mean, I'm dying. I'm dying to know about the earrings.
Oh,
right?
God.
Like your mother's reaction to ears being pierced.
She hated it, and so did I. Honestly, I absolutely hated it. I just.
Did you come out of the closet to her?
Yeah, I was like, Mom, I'm gay.
Yeah, and the gay dates, I forgot about that.
For my undercover journalism, I'm gay. But no, it was actually, Corey, straight up, it was demoralizing, dude.
Me and my
bad, dude.
Me and the
I
research.
Didn't even look.
I can only imagine.
Like, I couldn't even talk to girls, dude. It was bad.
me and the research director, we watch those, and you can always tell, because these guys are bragging, that it's some sort of Grindr or Tinder date, and we're just like, it's got to be one of the worst things ever to just be on the other side of this as this guy's bragging about all the laws he breaks or all of the, horrible things he does, meanwhile looking at you like you're eye candy.
Dude, I know. Well, you're telling me. I mean, I got my ears pierced because like people are, like Justin, you come across as this like pseudo masculine guy who's not gay at all, right? Like I work out 4 or 5 times a week. Like, not that gay guys don't work out. It's just I don't come across as gay, and so I sat across a dude who, I'll leave the guy nameless, but I sat across a teacher basically from the Bronx as one of my first investigations, and I didn't have the earrings. I just had to try and be gay, basically. And he was like, "Are you gay?" He's asking me, like, "You queer? You gay? Like, you don't look like this. Like, why are you sitting in front of me right now?" And I'm just like, God, I'm like, I need the earrings to lean into this thing. So that's ultimately why I did it. It was something I didn't want to do. I pierced both of them at first, and then I hated them so badly that I just took the right one out. And I was like, I'm just gonna lean into the left ear being gay, basically, and just rock with it for a year or however. I wore the left one for a year.
Did you grow a mustache?
No, I didn't.
Surprising you got anywhere. I guess.
Yeah. Well, Jordan Walker digged it, that's for sure. Because I mean, hey,
Jordan
I
Walker
never
look.
I mean, guys, this shit was traumatizing, straight up. I mean,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but I mean, like, this is
no,
what
we
you
can
do.
laugh about it now.
This is what you do to get to a story. There's sacrifice. People don't think about this stuff. They
Yeah.
just see the explosive, POV view of someone incriminating themselves. They don't realize all the work it took to get to that point, to get this guy, in front of you, and then to keep him in front of you, and to keep him from coming. All these things that are required for investigative journalism is a lot
Dude,
of
I
under
had
the
to present
scenes.
myself as a top tier gay guy, basically, and that there was no kissing. We would only hug for the first 5 meetings. Right?
Did you want to get into like construction after this experience? Just like,
yeah, pretty much.
This.
Oh.
Okay, well, let's go on with O'Keefe has now buried your story. Essentially, you had to go through hoops just to get your content back.
So I got the Commonwealth footage after the Jordan Walker story, right? And then there's the, I went to go to O'Keefe Media Group, and then that's where I got the Ramin Davari footage that we already watched.
Okay.
So
you do get.
Didn't I also remember in watching your documentary, didn't they also bury another story, another Phizer story as well?
In a way, yes. I mean, they buried Melissa McAtee's like second part of her story. Melissa McAtee went viral, as a whistleblower through Project Veritas already in October of 2021. And basically, she wanted to talk about the luciferase enzymes that she had in research papers and talk about how it's linked to the glowing in the vials. And Project Veritas wanted nothing to do with it. And they kept her silenced on the issue. And even like on a Twitter space after my Phizer Jordan Walker story went out, Melissa McAtee was given the mic. And I was there in real time, like with other journalists, like comm directors and everything else at PV. And they were like talking bad about Melissa because they were like, we don't want to hear her talking about the glowing vials. Like, she's such a conspiracy theorist. And I was like, guys, like, I worked on those vials and they glow. Like, I didn't say that to them, but I basically, I brought it up like under my breath to a couple other people, like, why are they shitting on her? Because she's telling the truth.
To me, it sounds like a concerted effort by them to bury, these kind of stories and to almost a conspiracy in itself. And I wonder, like we were talking about in the DMs, I wonder what might be behind that. I wonder if there may be, besides, his connections, James's connections to the CIA, I also wonder if there was potentially maybe a payoff involved to bury the story, because there was a lot of money for a lot of important people involved in that story. Or potentially the lawyer maybe got a payoff to say, to tell him to stay away from it. I'm not sure, but it definitely smells fishy to me. And then with the next thing we're about to talk about, with that Bohemian place or whatever,
Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove. That also makes my spidey senses tingle.
Very much. It made my spidey senses tingle in real time when it was all playing out. I thought it was the biggest red flag. Like, oh, we're gonna just let James go to Bohemian Grove and get away with it. He got confronted by some of my colleagues, and then that's how I had that phone conversation with him. I essentially knew it was coming. I knew I was getting confronted about him going to the Grove, and he wanted to see, as he says, I want to see how you're feeling, see how you're doing, take your temperature a little bit. And I'm like, bro, what do you mean? Like, it doesn't Alex Jones, your butt buddy, basically, like, isn't he like the exposer of Bohemian Grove? So you're here telling me that it's not a big deal? What's the answer here? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a red
He
flag.
just out and out told you, I went to Bohemian Grove.
Yes. He was already burned. He was confronted about it by two of my other colleagues. So, and I had already gotten to him or gotten to them. Like, I confronted my colleagues about James going because I had already figured it out, because I had a colleague resign who told me that he went to Bohemian Grove. And so I already knew before I knew he was invited, at least. I knew he was going. He flew to Seattle and then he went to Northern California right after. And he was gone for a week. Where else are you going during the July encampment of the high-end secret society Bohemian Grove? And then I found the freaking tent slip. I found the tent slip.
Yeah, I seen that. What?
Let's explain what Bohemian Grove is for some of the people in the audience that might not know exactly what that is and the people that are involved.
Basically, it's high-end, all the leading corporations of the world, those leading CEOs, leading politicians, leading people in the music industry, leading people in Hollywood, anybody who is anybody of influence, and really, probably the people that are ultimately pulling the strings of the new world order in a way, or call it the now world order like I do, right? Because it's kind of all obvious at this point that these people are not our friends, as they are all on the same team, Democrats and Republicans on the same team in the hidden, secret society. Like, let's dress up in robes and light sticks and have this effigy burn, supposed effigy burn.
This is what awakened my eyes, Justin, was Bohemian Grove, because I had been raised in a cult that's dealt with the old Canaanite gods that the Israelites had to push out of the land to inhabit. And of course, one very popular one is Molech. And Molech, for many years by archaeologists, was said to have never existed. That this was just some scare tactic in the Bible. They were just, no one in the right minds would worship a god that required child sacrifice. And so for years it was brushed aside by the the archaeological community, until in Carthage they discovered, I think it was like almost 200,000 urns full of child remains dedicated to the god Molech. And this is what piqued my interest. Of course, everyone knows Alex Jones went there in 2001. But what piqued my interest was, I think it's the last day. They all gather on one side of the hill, and then on the other side of the hill is a 30-foot tall statue, an owl statue called Molech. And these priests come out, they hold a ceremony praying to the god Molech. An effigy of a baby comes floating down the river, which I can only assume means, something similar to Moses or something along those lines. They pick the baby out of there. They put it on the altar. They pray to the god Molech. And then they pretend that out of the sky, fire comes down and consumes the baby alive. That's the last day ceremony. And, and this was like a god that was supposed to be dead 2,000 years ago. And it's not just that. It's like this little string of weird people into it. It's the most powerful people and influencers. We're not talking like the best actors. We're talking about people that hire the best actors. We're not talking about, the most successful franchise owner. We're talking about the people that owns all the franchises. These are the people that come to these parties. What was O'Keefe doing at Bohemia Grove in 2023?
As the king of investigative journalism, sting operations, mind you, right? Like, he's the guy who goes everywhere with an undercover camera.
Yeah.
But he wasn't allowed to bring in his phones, that's for sure. All he was able to do was make phone calls once a day outside of the camp and talk to the managing director, Steven. And I mean, I'll tell you guys this. The day I released my documentary, if you go to my website and hit the Project Whistleblower, you can see the whole 2023 member list is on my website. And a former colleague of mine at O'Keefe Media Group told me that Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk were also there as guests. So they're not on the member list, but he told me, so that's corroborated just by word of mouth. So
interesting.
Go to Project Whistleblower. Hit it at the top and then scroll down a little bit. That's my affidavit. It's like 15 pages. Sent it to Ron Johnson in the United Nations Courts for Crimes Against Humanity. It basically just has pretty much everything we've just talked about right now. And that Bohemian Grove Exposed file is just a big booklet that James had in his possession. And a source gave it to me after I came forward with my story. And then there's also just the huge guest list. I don't know why it's not loading.
It's probably my internet. It's tapping out. Yeah,
it's tapping out. Oh, there it is.
Oh, 61 pages, huh?
It's a big one.
This is a directory.
I'm gonna dig into that, and I'm gonna start one by one. I'm gonna start exposing those people.
Please do. I'm only one guy, so I can only do so much right now with my time.
Well, I mean, I just don't, who finances O'Keefe? And because I understand, was it 2022 he got kicked out of Project Veritas, and I know he went on his internet campaign for why he got kicked out, and I never knew the official story of the real reason why he got kicked out of his own company, but it seemed like it was a bit of a dark time for Mr. O'Keefe. So
yeah, you could say that, although I would also say that it's possible that James was in on the whole thing. I'm not saying that he was, but I'm saying it's possible. Like, basically, him and Matt Tiermond were like ringleaders of the destruction of Project Veritas. This is an article that was written about my entire documentary, written by Patrick Delaney from LifeSite News, and he actually brings all of this stuff up about. I think he goes less into James getting booted, but I mean the whole thing with Tiermond is, I mean, I've heard people speculate that Tiermond is James's handler, even though they hate each other. And with James's funding, James is funded by I'm looking at in the article. He's got Israel connections.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, if you type in Israel in that article, it says similarly included is Robert Shulman Foundation, which has also been a generous benefactor of David Horowitz Freedom Center, Christians United for Israel, Friends of the Israel Defense Fund Forces, and a hawkish pro-Israel group monitoring media bias called Camera. Apparently seeking to elicit affirmation of loyalty from Leslie. All right, so yeah. It says other large donors include songwriter Tom Snow, California Republican activist Mary Bell Snow, forceful conservative tight with Jewish Zionist David Horowitz. Two of the largest donors at the time were political and charitable organizations tied to the billionaire libertarians Charles and David Koch, or Koch, I'm not sure how you say that, and the Jewish Zionist family of billionaire investor Robert
Koch
Mercer.
brothers.
Yeah. They're connected to the Bohemian Grove from what I've seen. Who also has been a large funder of Breitbart News. And so, what another thing about Breitbart in general is James loves talking about Breitbart, and Benny Johnson actually comes from Breitbart. So, coincidence? All these Breitbart activist guys became journalists.
And they all
Char-
seem to report the same stuff at the same time, too, almost like it's kind of directed to them to do that.
Yep. Yeah, and there's even a tweet of James actually talking about how he met Charlie Kirk when he was 19 years old at a diner. What are the odds that they meet when they're 19 years old and then they both become influencers in the right-wing media space with millions of followers? Like millions. That's a huge impact that they have, whether it's good or bad, right? I'm not saying they don't necessarily do good work, but when you subvert a story like mine, it's controlled opposition for sure.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, even Elon Musk, when he bought Twitter, he didn't want free speech, and he still to this day is not for free speech. He really is for controlled opposition. He wants to be able to counter the left's narrative. That's what he really wants.
Definitely.
Well, and that's just it. One side got absolutely insane, and so it's easy to want to gravitate towards the other side. But that side will eventually also become authoritarian and totalitarian, and it'll have to gravitate back. And so staying in the center there and just being objective, and when sure, this stuff about O'Keefe, he's done a lot of good, even if he was controlled opposition. The stuff that was exposed was unknown to people. The fact that the
I
stuff
like his work.
Yeah, and the same thing with Alex Jones. Even if he was controlled opposition, the amount of stuff that was exposed, as crazy as his style was, served a purpose in the collapse of this New World Order. I mean, it saved us from a New World Order. These people did by breaking some of these stories. But then, when it came to true motive, it feels like COVID was the real test as to, was it for the good of all, or were you trying to pad your pocket this whole time, and was that the real motivator? And sadly, I think 99% of people, that's the motivator. As moral as you try to make yourself, you're still trying to make it for yourself.
Agreed. And
that.
Go ahead, Project. No, go ahead. You can go.
As humans, obviously, that's something that we fight with. It's in our human nature to look out for our own self-interest. But when you put, like, I have a problem with, bearing a story like that where that hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of kids, anybody really, but especially kids in particular, are going to die because of this, and you still choose to hide the story. like I have a problem with that. And
I
another
do
thing
too.
is I've noticed with a lot of these influencers is they care more about the money and the views and stuff like that than they do about the actual journalism or about doing what's right.
Yeah, I mean, after the release of my Jordan Walker story, all James had to do was say we could get hundreds of thousands of subscribers on this if we made it like a private
Yeah.
platform. And I was just like, bro, you care about views right now? Like, kids are dying from COVID shots, and this is all about a virus. Like it really wasn't about the COVID vaccine. It was about them mutating the virus, which was against my truth in reality. So it's a
Hey,
lot, man.
what
I
a way to
really
get.
hope Trump comes forward and does something about these vaccines, because like without, like I'm not as in the political realm. I'm not like very much left or right. Trump has definitely woken me up to the political, like mainstream media, in the sense of like I really didn't pay attention to politics as of 2018, 2019. I only started paying attention to this stuff, and right, like when COVID really started, right? Like I, I don't even know if I was old enough to vote in 2016, to tell you the truth. But I mean, if I was, I would have voted for Trump, and then I voted for him in 2020, and then in 2024, I didn't vote for either side. Brutally honest, because I have just been, I don't hate anybody. I just want Trump to come clean and say what's really going on with the COVID shots. As a Pfizer whistleblower, from my perspective, he does need to do that at some point, and so does RFK Jr. And we need, since these guys are in power, right? We need to hold them accountable as their supporters, and make these demands as we the people, versus allowing them to, just basically get away with what I perceive as, I mean, I get that Trump didn't mandate it, but he did Operation Warp Speed, and it was successful in injuring kids, and so that's not okay with me, right? Regardless of whether, he didn't mandate it or not. And I understand that Biden and everyone else was responsible for these mandates that came down on everybody once Trump was out. I just would like to see Trump come forward finally and say, listen, this was a military operation, and it was used to ultimately wake people up. And yes, people had to die, but we didn't want more people to die. Like this is what this was all about. I can admit I'm wrong too. I'm more than happy to admit I'm wrong about, I'm Trump, etc. Right? Like I'm not here shitting on the guy. I just wish he would come forward. That's why I tweeted at him the other day. I tweeted at Elon, tweeted at RFK, and I tweeted at Trump saying, listen, this mRNA technology is not safe. It needs to be pulled. So when we're seeing things like Project Stargate or whatever else with this guy Larry Ellison on the second day of Trump's presidency, talking about using this mRNA technology for cancer vaccines that are
Yeah.
preemptive, I
Yeah,
was
I'm
laughing.
totally against that.
I mean, it's also like that's not how cancer works either. Cancer itself is entirely misunderstood in the mainstream for sure. But he's talking about how this vaccine is going to like what do like preemptive screenings with our DNA, and like we're going to be able to like create vaccines that basically sends tiny little tumors that are in the blood. Like that's not how cancer actually works. I've studied biomedical science, and I still read a lot of scientific papers, and I do my own research, and that is not what cancer is, and that's not how you detect it. And so I really do hope for the best, and I wish that Trump is able to fix things this time around. I just would, I pray and hope that his supporters can also scream from the mountaintops and hold him accountable, so that we don't make the same mistake again with this mRNA technology, and I have hope, but it also takes more than hope, and it takes an act of doing, and going out there and speaking truth, regardless of whether it's hard or not, like I am grateful for how Trump has woke me up, but I also am going to hold him accountable at the same time, and I hope that doesn't rub anybody the wrong way. It's who I am, guys, so I
Yeah,
really
I agree with
appreciate it.
you. And I've also heard that Trump. I've heard sound bites of him recently saying, floating the idea of banning the COVID vaccine altogether. So that would definitely be a step in the right direction.
Well, I believe that there's the headlines coming out that he's like, for schools that are mandating it, at least, that they're gonna get fined and things of that nature. I don't have it right in front of me, so I don't know.
Federal funding gets taken away.
Yep.
Well, and I think too, like, apology would be nice, but I would rather see action. And I think, everyone asked for RFK, who we all know his stance on the medical world, and that it's rampant with abuse. We know RFK's stance on that. So RFK is where he needs to be, and Trump, by you have to play a very smart line, because the pharmaceutical company is going to, a large swath of money is going to come from them to help your presidency. Bernie Sanders was getting money from him, for Christ's sakes. Like everyone, they're in everyone's pocket, whether you want it or not. And to me, I'd take their money right up to the point where I throw them all in jail. Like, taking their money doesn't offend me. Give me your money, and then I'll use that money to throw you all in jail. I don't have a moral stance on that. If they're going to give me money so that I can do what's right by the crimes that were committed by these companies, because Bill Gates went there like 3 days before Trump went into office, literally begging for his money, and whatever Trump told him. I mean, Bill Gates seemed very docile until Trump cut all his funding to all his organizations. So I think that's sort of the game Trump's playing this time around, is he's keeping his cards close to his desk, chest. What's who's a friend and who's a foe, and like what Project said, him maybe coming out here and saying that these things are going to get banned until they can get analyzed. I mean, that's a huge step, because I mean, and you talk about holding them responsible, but what about in our community like that? And you're a prime example of this. You went into your community, into your workspace, and you found the flaws in there and brought them to light because they affected people's lives negatively. And that's all of us. Like, we all know of some corruption in the town we live in, or, some First Amendments being trampled. We all have an opportunity to call it out locally, because that's really the only way you're going to see lasting change, is if your neighbors realize what Sheriff Johnson's doing down the street at 1:00 in the morning.
No, I hear you. I think that if what is playing out is, hopefully, that now that RFK is out there and approved as secretary, we, as the far right, that the left will call us, right? Where, I mean, I'm very apolitical when it comes to all of this, but people will call me far right, probably, right, as far right as it gets. We need to hold these people accountable, in the sense of bringing, making sure that RFK is speaking truth, and, doing what he said he was going to do with the food, for example, making sure that they're not spraying glyphosate on our food anymore, and that, all states can have access to raw milk, and that, that they're not going to, vaccinate all these animals and cull animals in the future. Like, we really need to keep our eyes open, because if we don't, then we're just going to get played. And I mean, money talks, unfortunately, and a lot of people sell out in politics, so we just need to remain conscious as to what's going on with the people in power, regardless of there are politician or not, because if you can't question a politician that you side with, then you're in a cult, basically, is
Yes.
what
Yep.
I've seen somebody talk about
Yep.
in the past. And I ultimately side with it, so that's why I come across as apolitical. But I mean, I really do have good. I hope that everyone in power has good intentions. And I mean, you can look at, I come from that intelligence background of doing undercover journalism, so I understand how intelligence works, and I understand where talking about this Project Stargate on day 2, I had no idea who Larry Ellison was, to tell you the truth, right? I had no idea. But now he's out there and exposed, in the sense of there are people out there talking about who this guy is now. He owns land in Hawaii, I believe. Like, he owns his own little island. Like, he's a multi billionaire. So anyone who's of a critical thinking mind is going to see this and be like, what the heck is going on, right? So, it's just the principle of, well, like, yes, he's exposed theoretically, but we also need to make sure that this actually doesn't get injected into people, because from my perspective, like we were just talking about, I mean, that is, if it ultimately is released onto the public and people are allowed to take a vaccine that is preemptive for cancer and stuff like that, that is legitimately like mass surveillance, mark of the beast type system, which is really concerning, and I mean, the way that AI and everything else is ramping up like it is, we need to be hypercritical of legitimately everybody. And it's unfortunate that we have to be super hypercritical of everybody, but I say trust nobody but yourself, and then allow for your discernment ultimately to take place, so I like I said, I'm very apolitical when it comes to a lot of things, and I see a lot of great people out there that I feel should ultimately be just asking more questions, and being hypercritical like myself, because I mean, I was afforded a situation where I had to be hypercritical of James O'Keefe and going to Bohemian Grove, right? So that's what makes me hypercritical, and I'm able to essentially, see through the veil in a way, right? Where I'm like I see through multiple optic lens in a way, so I do see how it can play out both sides, and that this could ultimately be exposing things. I want to see how the long op itself plays out, because I hope that
It's
there's no
not
Stargate injection that is
well.
released onto people and kills them. Like I don't want to see that, because I'm not going to work for Stargate to expose it, right?
Words of wisdom by Justin Leslie, not working for Stargate.
Yeah.
Hopefully you won't eat those words down the road.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll see. I mean, I'm out there already, so I don't know if they'd be bringing me on.
Well, Leslie, I mean, thanks so much for coming on, man, and telling your story. Project, did you have anything else you wanted to ask him? I didn't know what. Didn't want to keep you all night, although I feel like we could talk all night.
We could go probably a couple more hours, honestly, but I'm gonna call it. If you guys are calling it, I'm pretty good right now. I'm gonna get some food in me and get to bed soon. But Project, if you have any last questions or two, I can stay on for sure. And then really appreciate you guys having me on and allowing me to be open with you and going through all the footage and just providing me access to your audience. I'm very grateful for the platform, and it's not every day I get to come on a big show like yours, so I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us, for one.
Yeah.
And
You're the
I'm
one
sure
that did all the work, Justin. I mean, you know, like you're the one that it went undercover. You're the one that exposed James O'Keefe. Not exposed, but revealed other character issues to the world that needed to be addressed, you know? And I mean, like, we're honored to have you on this show telling us about your experience. Because
I just want to say also that you are a hero, my friend. You know, I just want to point that out to all 12,172 of you people watching. This man is a hero. I wish we need more people that have the testicular fortitude to stand up and do the right thing, like Justin here. We need more whistleblowers, more people that are not okay with what they see. You know, there are so many people that just for a paycheck, and we see this all across, you know, especially in like policing and stuff, but we see so many people where they just look the other way as long as they're getting the paycheck. They're afraid to lose their job, and we need more people that have the balls to stand up and say, wait a minute, no, this is not right. I need to do the right thing. And if you see something, say something. And there are people, you may feel like you're going up against a machine or a mountain, or you may feel overwhelmed, but don't. There are people that are willing to help you, are willing to hear your story, are willing to platform you. People like me, you know, I hate to say it, but even Project Veritas at the time, you know, for the right, you know, I don't know if they may have got into the right reasons at first with you and then got corrupted, but there are people that will help you and want to do the right thing, and we need more people to do that. So I just want to say thank you for your service. You are a hero.
100%.
And with a send off like that, Justin, you can't ever make a mistake again in your adult life. So good luck.
I appreciate the kind words, Project. Yeah, no, honestly, if there are any whistleblowers in the audience that are out there, DM me as well, and I will, you know, interview you and give you a platform, and we can go through your whistleblower story as we did here. You know, that's what my justintegrity.net is all about, and you know, essentially, stay tuned for those that are listening as it's, you know, I'm currently working on things, so just stay tuned, and we will have a big story at some point, hopefully this year. It's a big project, so so stay tuned. I'm a busy guy. I'm ultimately also I'm going back to school and learning how to be a chiropractor, actually. So gonna learn how to heal people, and I'm still gonna do investigative journalism through, you know, podcasting and just telling documentary stories that I feel called to tell. So, you know, again, guys, I can't thank you enough for having me on your show. It was a really pleasant and wonderful conversation. I've been on like 40 something podcasts or so over the last year, and
that's one, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
no,
one.
you guys are like top 2 and not 2, right?
Top 2? Who's number 1? I need to know his name.
I said top 2 and not 2, right? So that's you. No, but I mean, every podcast I get on is definitely different, and I'm just able to share a different perspective with the hosts, and you know, from breaking the story with you know, people in the beginning to coming on here, there's always something that's evolving, you know, where like that quote of Alex Jones saying that James is trained by the CIA, basically, like that is new information that I didn't have in the podcast that I released in, you know, March of 2023 with people, you know. So everyone is serving their own purpose that has me on in regards to telling my story and providing updates.
Do you know Mike Wallach? He did a 20-hour documentary called The Viral Delusion. And he did it maybe like 10 years ago. And I reached out to him because of what, we just briefly covered on this show, but maybe we can set up a time to have both of you guys on and discuss that more.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Sweet.
All right. Well,
all right, well, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Great night. Sleep well. And we'll talk on the flip side. If you guys want to have me back on, just hit me up. And we'll
Anytime,
figure it
brother.
out.
Anytime. We'd
Yeah.
love to have you back on.
That's Justin Leslie with
Justin Just Integrity. I've got his name on the screen right here. Make sure you follow him. He's on X. If you want to, go ahead, drop his website link in the chat for him too, so they can go check his website out as well.
Oh yeah, I'll get on that here. Yeah, I think it's justintegrity .net.
Yeah, so definitely give him a follow. Go check out his website, and his podcast is also on Rumble. He is also. Let me share my screen real quick. I'll show everybody that.
I mean, just crazy the roller coaster ride this guy's already been on. Like he has gone through everything.
Oh, I know, absolutely. But he's got a Rumble channel as well here. Justin Leslie, Just Integrity Network. So make sure you follow him, give him a like as well. Watch his documentaries. He's got a bunch of them out here, exposing Phizer and James O'Keefe. Hell of a story. He does it. The documentary, it's about 2.5 hours long or so.
Well worth it.
He does a great. Say again.
Oh, well worth it. Well worth it.
Oh yeah, well worth it. He does a great job. Lots of information in it. He really tells the story well. I wanted to play the whole thing for you on the show, but we'd be here 5 hours if we did that. So obviously you're going to have to go watch that on your own. But I will say it's definitely worth watching, and every one of you guys should definitely go check it out.
100%.
Other than that, I mean, that's pretty much all I got, other than, the usual routine of this channel is funded by you guys. We're fan funded. We don't rely on sponsors, and we certainly don't get paid any ad revenue or anything. So the only way that we can keep doing these podcasts, keep paying the bills, keep doing the investigations, keep putting out the hard-hitting articles that you guys love, is with your support. So if you can consider donating, you can drop a couple bucks in our pay apps down below, scrolling on the screen. You can also buy merch from the website, which is projectconstitutiontiktok.com. I sell products which teach people their rights, how to, what to say if they get pulled over by the police, what their rights are, word for word, so you don't get in trouble, and also so you're protected later in the courtroom. And you can also subscribe to the Patreon, which is patreon.com/projectconstitution. And if you subscribe, we have multiple levels of $5, the cheapest level we have. Nothing's behind a paywall, by the way. So you can join as a free member as well and still get all the access. But if you want to support us, do it from the $5 member or up. If you get the $20 level of the Patreon, I will give you everything I sell digitally for free as a thank you for becoming a member, which includes the trifold, the cop cards, and the pocket constitution. So it's a $36 value. It's, great tools to have. And that's pretty much it. So if you can support us, we appreciate it. If you find value in what we do, this is a great show and we have a great audience. And thank you all for being here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, one hell of an interview after another. Just plug Phantom Society, phantomfacts.com.
Oh, yeah. definitely go subscribe to Phantom Society. Corey, he great show. He every Wednesday he does a podcast on his personal channel, Phantom Society, on YouTube, and also on X he streams on. Killer show.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, we and for this week only, we're doing some nightly shows just to sort of test the waters and see what people think of it. But tomorrow we're going to have a interview with Uncut Speech at Uncensored Speech there on X. He has been over the past few years working on translating every single speech Hitler gave in his career that was recorded, and so far he's up to I think over 100. And we just want to know why. So he agreed to come on our show and talk about it. So if that type of a person interests you as to why he's doing that and his viewpoints, join us tomorrow night, 8:00 on Phantom Society. And if you have questions, we love call-ins on that show too. So if you have questions, feel free to call in and talk to him as well. All right, that's it for my spiel.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be definitely an interesting show. And then you got another big show coming up later in the month, right?
Wednesday, we have Spike Cohen coming on the show.
Yep.
So famed libertarian Spike Cohen is coming on the show. He's been working at youarethepower.net, working as of late on 6 huge cases of abuse in Georgia and a few other states with Child Protective Services. So we're going to get the update on him for that, and also probably to do a little Bible talk with him as well.
He's doing great work, so definitely curious to hear what's new, what he's got going on, what's new in his world. So yeah, great show. Everybody should definitely check it out and make sure you follow Corey here.
We appreciate it, and I mean, I can't wait. Do we know what's on the project for next Sunday? Or, I mean, I'm sure you're gonna be doing some live streaming. There's Epstein's list has got to drop. So
yeah, we're gonna at next Sunday's program. We haven't figured out yet. We've got some leads out there, so whatever happens. But we're definitely probably going to go live at some point this week because the Epstein files and Diddy files are supposed to drop. It should have been already. Honestly, it pisses me off that they're holding on to them. What's supposedly she's reviewing them. They're on Pam Bondi's desk and she's reviewing them. What is there to review? I mean, at this point, they need to just be released. And secondly,
maybe this was the deal with the Republican senators, was that their names get etched out, all the Democrats get to fall, and they call it that, and they'll vote in Cash, Tulsi, and RFK. That was maybe the deal that was made.
Well, that I certainly hope not, but it definitely leaves questions in my mind. The fact that it has not been released right away, and that they're censoring it supposedly before they release it. So I have problems with that, and also Cash said on day one he was going to release it by the end of the day one, and guess what? It's now what, day 3, day 2 or day 3? I think day 2 is it's his second full day, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, is this legalese speak? He did release it to Pam Bondi. You know, like maybe that's what's going on.
Technically, yeah, I guess.
You know, all right. Well, we got a lot to talk about when that show comes along.
But when that drops, my point is when that drops, we're definitely going to go live and talk about it. So be on the lookout for that. That'll happen at some point this week.
All right, buddy. Well, I say one hell of a show. Thanks again to Justin Leslie for coming on and telling his story.
Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, I just want to make one more comment as well. Is I did reach out to James O'Keefe for comment. before this show just to see if he had anything to say about any kind of allegations that would be brought up against him during the show. And he did not get back to me at the time of recording. So I will say that.
More than welcome to come on, though, if he wants to. More than welcome.
As I told him in a DM I sent him, he's more than welcome. If he wants to come on the show and tell his side of the story, he can do that, and we'd be happy to have him. So it's full transparency. I just wanted everybody to know that as well. We will cover both sides if the other side wants to say their part. And with that, I think we are done for this evening. So thank you guys all for coming, and have a great day. Thanks for trying out. I'm losing my words. Thanks for coming to the show. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Peace. I probably should have got my outro ready before I said that.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Eat the cat, eat the cat. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Eat the cat, eat the cat. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Eat the cat, eat the cat.